Hello to everyone. To the previous lecture series. So now we are going to see about another one new topic is called life cycle of data science. So today everywhere we are talking about data and data science, data analyst, and then data pre-processing and everything that is happening related with the data. So before that we have to analyze what is that data analysis, and then what is data process, and then what is the prediction. Now we have to be see about what is the life cycle of the data science. So in previous episode we are clearly talking about what is the data, and then what is the classification of the data, what do you mean by that discrete data, and then what is that meaning for that continuous data. So these are all the things we learned, and then we talk more in this topic. So in the data science we are going to be talk about in that life cycle as an skill tree, and some of that questions we are going to be discuss now. So now we have to be see when we are talking about that data scientist, how much of the effort that has been put for every kind of the thing. So if a person has to get that good outcome, or he or she wants to succeed in that data analysis, first of all they have to spend at most 60% of efforts, and then 60% of that energy to organize and also to clean the data. So when we have to collect the data, it may be unstructured, or it may be raw data, and it may be unclean data. So first of all, if we want that good outcome for our analysis, or if we have to need that is good outcome for that prediction, we have to need organize the data, as well as the data should be that clean. So when we talk about that is a cleanse of that data, means that data should be that relevant. There shouldn't be no misunderstood data. There shouldn't be no missing data. So these are all the things that should be concentrated as of 60%. Give that good concentration to organize and clean the data. And then the 90% of that effort that has to be go for collect the data for the data sets, just for that taking the survey either by that paper format or through by that online. So whatever it may be, we have to be collected a data set. So for that we have to spend only that 19% of that effort to get that data from that entity, real world entity, or by that data acquisition. On third, 9% that has to be used for data mining, or to draw that pattern as an effort. So mining the data, that's also that another one important thing. We may have that thousands and thousands of the data. From that thousands of the data, we have to be mine appropriate data. So what we need. And next one, what kind of that algorithm, or that what kind of that model I am going to implement the data. So that needs the 7% of that effort alone. So model selection, training, and then so refining. And then so rest of the things that has to be covered under the 5% of that effort. So this is the effectiveness of that data science. On that next, now we have to be talk about what is life cycle of the data science. That is very important concept behind the life cycle of the data science. So the first one is called that data acquisition. So data acquisition, that is very important part in that data analysis. We have to be get that is a relative data from that appropriate domain, or that appropriate entity, or that appropriate sample of that entire population. So data acquisition, that is very important. In previous slide we talked about that is the 60% of our efforts should be give to the data acquisition and the data preparation also. So data acquisition and the data preparation. So these two things has to contribute that 60% of that effort when we have to implement these things. And then at third, we have to be look it out into the hypothesis, and then so modeling. So how we have to model the data, and then so what are all the hypothesis we are implementing into the prepared data. That has to be that one part of the life cycle too. So after that modeling, after the hypothesis, we have to be go with that interpretation of the data. If we may have that is large quantity of the data, but each and every attribute we classified in the data, that should be that meaningful. So when we have to be look over into that attribute, the data set should be that understandable. So what are all that columns that it has to represent, it should have that certain meaning. So that interpretation, that should be the very important thing in that data science life cycle. So afterwards, the life cycle has to be traveled to the deployment. So how we are so projecting that is the data, either by that visualization, or we are applying that any kind of the statistical tools, or we are going for that any kind of that regression things, or we have to be go for that any clustering and all. So how we are going to present, and then so how we are going to analyze all these things, that is comes under the title of the deployment. And finally, we have to be go for that is that optimization. So the optimization is that is very important, because we may have that huge volume of the data with the numerous numbers of the columns. We may say that is the attributes, but the customer need the comparisons among some of the attributes alone. They won't go for that is all comparisons in between of the attributes. So what kind of the things they need to know, such thing that should be produced in that screen as in the visual format. So for that we have to be go for that optimization. And finally, it's giving that outcome of that operation. So after the completion of these 5 stages, the data has that good outcome, and then the person who is looking that outcome of the data can able to go for that is the next decision in their business or in their things, so what they look out for. And the next one, we have to be elaborate these things. And very first one, that is the data acquisition, already what we saw in that previous slide. Yeah, data acquisition, just we have to collect the data. The collection of the data may be in the 3 kind of that format. The data may be the static, so we may circulate what we have to say, forms, or we may collect that things through by some questions, or we may prepare that is the questionnaires to collect that piece of that information. So it is kind of that feedback system. So we are asking the question with the end user, and then they are answering for that question, and then we are preparing that is the data set. The data set may be in the form of the CSV file, or maybe in the form of the text files. And next one, it's called that is that live data. So when we are doing that some task, or when we are doing that some application, in that moment, in that backend, the system has to collect. So what are all the things that has happening in the behind the screen? So this is called that is the logs of the data. So this kind of the things can be taken out from sensors, or by the controllers, or some of the data acquisition systems that may supports to go for the live kind of the data. And last one, it is the virtual data. In case if we are going for the simulation, or we may go for that testing of that certain component, we may itself have to create that certain data. So it is called that is the data virtualization. The data virtualization may be in the content of that caching, or in the form of that storing. And then next here we are seeing about data sample for the data set inventory. So here we are having that 4 kind of that attributes. It states about data available and accessible, and next one, data available but not accessible, data to collect, data to obtain from the third party sources. That is 4 kind of that attributes that is stated in the data set of that inventory. But in the data set we are having that 5 varieties of the parameters. So in case if you are taking an example, so there is one company and they are having the distributor. The distributor has to supply its goods or that article to that seller or to that shop owners. So in the data set we are classifying to the 5 with that 5 categorization. The first one is talking about the products shipped. So that is distributor is shipping his products to that sellers, and then there, so here the point is saying about so data available and then so accessible. So the data that has been available and then so accessible among with the distributor alone. So since he know so how much of the demand is having with the sellers, and how much of the products that should be supplied among that sellers. So the distributor has to know clearly about so what kind of the product is going to be shipped, and then so what is the quantity is there, and then so when that has to be transmitted, and who is the receiver of that particular consignment. And the rest of the things, if we are looking, the product is shipped in this kind, the data available but not accessible, it is not come to into the constraint. Meanwhile, the data there is no need to collect, since the data that has been with the distributor alone. And then last one, the attribute the data to obtain from the third party sources, that is also no need for that products shipped, because all the information that has been with the distributor alone. And the next one, product financials. So the distributor is transferring the products to that seller, and then the seller is having that ability to pay the payment to the company where the product is came from. So the data is not accessible by that the particular person, but the data is available. He cannot able to accessible that financial thing. The payment that has been come from that company alone, so not from that seller. The seller directly pay that is the products what he purchased from the distributor, and then the data should be collected. There is no need of that. The data to obtain from the third party sources, there is no need of it. And then the product call center data, and then the customer is enjoying that product. If he feels that any complaint in the product, and he is making that complaint to the customer cell, so that is also the data is available, but we can't able to accessible by the particular distributor. And the next one, live product feedback service. This is purely based by the customer. The distributor want to, and then the company want to. The people, those who are enjoying that product, those who are using that product, can able to give that is the feedback. So data should be collected alone. The data cannot be obtained from the third party sources, because the third party sources doesn't know about what is that product is. And then finally, the third party sources may they may market that product so through by that social media in the term of that product sentiment. If the product seems to be that worthwhile, and that people can able to recommend this product to the users to use this product. So this is one sample data set, how we have to analyze that data through by that data set inventory. And then we have to go for that project predicting failures, and then so proactive maintenance. The important concept of the data science means, before any issues that has been taken, or that issues that makes to halt that system abruptly, before that everything we have to be analyzed that data sets. So for that, every softwares or that every apps or that every machine, so whatever it may be, they are having that is the log data. So that first point it's saying the baseline normal operational patterns by modeling that unstructured logged data. So the first thing we should have that the logged data may be that unstructured, and then this logged data should be analyzed, and then its patterns and the things that has to be extracted by the domain experts, and they have to come to the conclusion either the system is running promptly or the system is having that any issues, and may apply that is the any statistical measurements there, either by that machine learning or to determine and to determine what kind of that errors that has to be allowed. So if that limitation of errors exceeding that threshold level, and then the expert team has to go with that next other alterations. They have to identify the patterns of that activity to anticipate and react to the circumstances that might happen into the product. Otherwise, if that people not at all concentrate in all these things, this disrupt that is the operations. So this is the concepts behind how we have to be keeping that is the proactive maintenance. So that is also we have to be working in the data. So data is that very important when we have to be go with all these things. So up to this, I am concluding this second session of the data science. On the next, we have to be talk about the rest of the things. Thank you.